All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking something so fundamental, it is literally running the show without you even realizing it. I'm talking about communication. But listen, not the way you were taught in middle school English class. Communication is the hidden code. It is the underlying operating system of your reality. And look, if your life isn't exactly where you want it to be right now, your system needs a serious upgrade. So ask yourself, why do some people just effortlessly succeed while others are constantly struggling to keep their head above water? It is so easy to just chalk it up to luck, right? Or maybe having the right resources. But the answer is actually far more structural than that. The absolute key differentiator between the person who thrives and the person who stays stuck, it lies entirely in how they communicate. To really get this, we have to completely redefine the word. When you hear communication, your brain probably immediately jumps to, talking to other people. But honestly, that is just a microscopic fraction of the whole system. Communication is the fundamental operating system of reality. Think of it as the data you process, the code you input, and the commands you ultimately execute. Now, this operating system breaks down into three very distinct layers. First up, internal communication. That's you talking to you. Second is vertical communication, you talking to a higher purpose or God. And third, horizontal communication. That's you talking to others and increasingly you interacting with technology. Over the course of this explainer, we are going to audit and upgrade every single one of these layers. But before we can start rebuilding, we really have to look at the bugs currently infecting your system. If you ever noticed how some people just constantly mumble, it's a non-committal expression. It's basically an avoidance of taking responsibility for their own words. Or consider the heavy reliance on profanity. People think they're emphasizing a point, but an expletive is not an explanation. It's an indicator of verbal laziness and a severe lack of clarity. And then there are words like try. When someone says, well, I'm trying to do this, it evokes a visceral reaction because there is no such thing as trying. You either do it or you don't. You might not get the exact result you expected, sure, but the action itself is absolute. All right, let's move to the internal layer and see how this builds our foundation. Way back in the 90s, Tony Robbins laid out this incredible blueprint for human excellence. He said that to model excellence, you must model a person's physiology, their mental syntax, and most importantly for what we're talking about today, their belief systems. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding what a belief actually is. It sounds deeply philosophical, right? But it's actually incredibly practical. A belief is simply a story that you tell yourself about an expected outcome. That's it, just a story. So think about the stories you're currently running in your own internal operating system. Most people are perpetually telling themselves unfavorable stories about what's going to happen to them. And then, shocker, they are totally surprised when they get undesirable outcomes. Let me ask you something. Would you let a friend talk to you the way you talk to yourself? Seriously, think about the names you call yourself when you make a mistake. I am such an idiot. I'm a failure. If a friend actually spoke to you like that, you would cut them out of your life immediately. No question. Yet we allow this toxic self-talk to play on an infinite loop in our own minds, completely destroying our potential. To really understand how this toxic internal code manifests in reality, I want you to imagine you walk up to a chair. You get ready to sit down, but right before you do, you notice one of the legs is completely wobbly and broken. The whole thing just appears fundamentally unstable. Are you going to put your full weight on it? Of course not. No way. Your expectation, your belief, is that the chair is going to collapse and you're going to get hurt. Your subconscious mind will absolutely not let you fully commit your weight to a scenario that looks unstable. And this is exactly what happens when you tell yourself a negative story about an upcoming project, a new relationship, or a massive goal. And honestly, this totally reframes a problem almost all of us face: procrastination. Procrastination is not a character flaw. Literally nobody actually has a procrastination problem. Procrastination is just a symptom. The actual root disease here is anxiety. And anxiety is simply the feeling you get when you are expecting an unfavorable outcome. You procrastinate because your internal story is telling you that the chair is wobbly. So how do we actually fix the wobbly chair? It comes down to a 4-step sequence. Take someone with a terrifying fear of flying, for example. To a frightened passenger, zooming through the sky in a massive metal tube makes zero sense. It feels wildly unstable. The fix isn't to just, think positive. The fix is to educate yourself on higher principles. By taking flying lessons, you learn that planes are actually designed to fly effortlessly, like to the point where it's actually harder to keep them on the ground in high winds. When you acquire that new data, you change your internal story. Your belief shifts, the anxiety entirely vanishes, and you can finally put your full weight down. Okay, once your internal communication is rock solid, we build upward to layer 2, vertical alignment. This is your communication with a higher purpose, or God. It's all about aligning your personal operating system with an objective that is much, much larger than yourself. The thing is, most people have a complete disconnect when it comes to vertical communication. They interact with spiritual texts or prayer like it's some sort of cosmic vending machine. They pray to get God to do their thing. But the ultimate system upgrade happens when you communicate to get yourself in tune to do His thing. When you finally align your life to a higher objective rather than just making demands, your entire framework of operation changes. Now, once you have that internal clarity and that vertical alignment, that power naturally has to flow outward. And that brings us to layer 3, horizontal communication. This is where your newly upgraded code actually interacts with the rest of the world. This is how you find a mate, how you raise your kids, how you hire a killer team, and how you build a business empire. The absolutely crucial point in horizontal communication is entirely about focus. So many creators, authors, and entrepreneurs fail because they fall in love with their own trinkets, They focus on the amount of time they spent building them. It's a purely transactional mindset. Masterful communication requires you to focus 100% on the transformation you are providing to the other person. You have to clearly articulate their value, their outcome, before the interaction even begins. But listen, horizontal communication is no longer just about interacting with other human beings. We have crossed into a completely new frontier, artificial intelligence. And this is the ultimate test of your communication operating system. Why? Because an AI does not read body language, it doesn't imply intent, it responds solely to your articulation. In this new age of technology, your future success is directly tied to your vocabulary and your precision. AI takes you along for the ride, or it leaves you entirely behind, based purely on your ability to describe exactly the outcome you desire. If your words are lazy, your technological leverage is going to be practically zero. All right, so we've broken down the internal, the vertical, and the horizontal layers. The big question now is execution. How do you actually update your code? Well, we're going to close out this explainer with what I call the upgrade protocol. These are 2 highly actionable steps you can use to rewrite your communication operating system starting today. Here is exactly how you build your new reality. Step 1, read more well-written books with good ideas. You have to input better data to output better words. But step 2 is where the real magic happens. Write more. When you read a great book or watch a brilliant explainer like this one, don't just copy the author's quotes. Actually write down your unique thoughts generated by their words. That synthesis, that processing of information, is what creates the mental content that literally levels up your life. I want to leave you with this final kind of piercing thought. If your future was built solely on the words you spoke today, the words you mumbled, the names you called yourself, the clarity of the outcomes you demanded, what kind of life are you building? Are you building a mansion? Or are you building a wobbly chair? Look, your reality is a direct reflection of your communication. Upgrade your words, and you will undoubtedly level up your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.